Next is consideration and approval of the student dress addendum to the 2021 Parent-Student Handbook. Dr. Walsh, are we ready to turn it? I'm going to turn it over to you to turn it over to Dr. Von Echten.
Perfect. Thank you again, President Greenberg. I will have Dr. Von Echten introduce this item. I want to note we do have comments, so after he is done presenting, we'll make sure to read that comment. And with that, Dr. Von Echten, I believe you are live and ready to go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. President Greenberg, governing board members, Dr. Welsh, and cabinet. Tonight I present to you a first and second reading of recommended amendment to the 2020-21 Parent-Student Handbook pertaining to student dress code and the wearing of cloth face masks. The language you see is recommended to provide clarity to our communities and school leaders for the wearing of cloth face masks. And for some background, initially, this language was presented by me to the COVID-19 response team. The COVID-19 team does serve as the district emergency response team, and we sought their input. Afterwards, the charge to create the final language was then delegated to the Superintendent's Committee on Reopening, or otherwise known as SCORE, is the acronym. This committee includes representation from stakeholder groups from within the district. And as you recall, SCORE did create the PV Schools Prepared Reopening Plan, which was approved by the board in June. If the approved amendment, if approved, the amendment will be added to the current 2020-21 Parent-Student Handbook as an addendum and will remain there as deemed necessary through the pandemic. It is recommended that the governing board approve the cloth face amendment to the cloth face mask amendment to the 2021 Parent-Student Handbook, and I can take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Von Echten. Actually, why don't we hear I know there was one comment submitted specifically to address this agenda item. So I will turn it back over to Ms. Anderson very quickly, and then we can open the floor for questions.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys are thrilled to hear me again. This one is from Dina Chalu. Thank you so much for all you're doing. As a child raised entirely in the PVUSD and now with children of my own, I am confident that PVUSD is doing the best they can during these unprecedented times. I believe the board should reconsider elementary recess not being considered as a vigorous activity in the 2020-2021 Parent Handbook. With regards to the upcoming changes to the Parent Handbook regarding masks, I am concerned that elementary recess is not considered vigorous activity and is not exempt from mask wearing. While our family embraces mask wearing and social distancing, I do believe that elementary recess should be considered vigorous activity. I can't tell you the number of times I have seen elementary age children come in from recess red-faced and hair flopped with sweat. Water bottles are not accessible after lunch recess, at least at our school, and even in October, temperatures can reach up to the upper 90s, hopefully not higher. I know that our school's socially distanced games like freeze tag and shadow tag are popular, as well as many other running games. Once again, thank you for all you do. I'm proud to be a parent in the PVUSD district, as well as a member of the Wildfires School Council.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I see Mrs. Case. Nope, you're still muted, Nance. Dr. Welsh, can you?
Yep, I'd be glad to help. Hang on. There we go. You should be, there we go.
Okay, thank you. With that on there, I couldn't switch mine. Okay. It says on here, students may remove face masks during time specifically determined by the school administrative team as the designated face mask breaks, including but not limited to times for actively eating and drinking and at times of vigorous exercise or activity. Elementary recess is not considered rigorous activity. Face mask breaks will require appropriate physical distance. I think if you could say kids are physically distancing, that they should be able to do that at recess. I was just recently at one of my grandchildren's schools and they were doing that. And I just think, and it's not even as hot where they were as it is here. I think we have to be careful with that. And I think there should be a little bit change in the verbiage right there. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Actually, Nancy, I'm not sure I understand what is the change you're recommending.
Oh, I'm sorry. They said that, like the comment was, elementary recess is not considered. It says vigorous activity, and I think it is. I've seen many children come in hot and sweaty and running around. I just think that they need to be able to, if they're in small groups, that's different, but if they're running around, they need to be able to take their mask off.
Go ahead, Ms. Greenberg.
I don't, Mrs. Matura, did you have something along those lines? Or I suspect what Dr. Welsh wanted to have Dr. Van Echten do is
explain.
Let me start there because I think there was probably a different question. Yeah, if you could, Dr. Van Echten, maybe share a little bit from the perspective of our committees on that language.
Sure, absolutely. I think that within the committee, our parent members and our principal members debated this one quite a bit, but felt strongly that recess being shorter in duration than a structured PE class, recess itself being unstructured and harder to monitor, that the level of activity typical in a recess would not prohibit a child from wearing a face mask and being to have a level of physical activity commensurate with that. We do have fortunately the ability, the luxury of having a patron of our district, which is a practicing pediatrician and has served as a bit of a counsel on some of these matters too, who also chimed in that the belief that a recess, remaining masked throughout a recess would be appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Van Echten. Mrs. Matura?
Yes, I have a different comment later, but right now, is it possible that we could reach out to schools and maybe encourage them to allow students that to bring out water, because this is a time where we're not going to be encouraging using water fountains and things like that, that maybe as individual schools could be looking at their policies for when they're allowing students to bring water outside, that might alleviate some of this as well.
Yeah, Ms. Mitchell, I think that's, go ahead, Mitch. Yep.
I say absolutely. We would encourage that families do send their children to school with clearly marked, labeled water containers that they can have accessible to them at all times.
Thank you. And I do have a different comment unless someone else had a comment about this.
Does anybody else have a comment? I'm seeing shaking heads, so back to you, Mrs. Matura.
Okay. I just was looking for some clarification language in the final sentence where it says these requirements will remain in place until such time as the COVID-19 pandemic has subsided to the point that wearing cloth face masks is no longer necessary. I would recommend adding the words subsided to the point that PV schools determines that wearing cloth masks is no longer necessary. I'm just concerned that if we don't specifically state who is making the determination when it's no longer necessary, that there'll be a lot of confusion of, well, they heard somewhere that it's no longer necessary and therefore this part is over. There's lots of different opinions going out all the time now about everything. And if we can just be clear that it will be when the district determines, that way they can wait for that specific timing.
Yeah, to your question, Ms. Matura, I'm sure that's something we could add there if that's the intent or desire of the board.
Absolutely. That would provide good clarification. Thank you.
Mrs. Case?
Let me say that I am totally in favor of children wearing face masks in classes. That is not part of my concern at all. I just think when they're running around hard, which they need to do so that they can do better at school, they need to be able to breathe openly. And my oldest daughter was telling me once, Mom, I even jog with a face mask on. I thought, yeah, but you're in San Diego and not Phoenix. It's hot here, and that's different than where it's not hot. In the wintertime, that's a different story. But when it's really hot, I think that's a lot of problems. My opinion. Thank you.
Mrs. Bacon?
Thanks. I have a question that's kind of maybe not related, but not related. Are we going to be able to open our playgrounds? Let's just assume we're going back the beginning of October. Do we have to follow City of Phoenix public park regulations for those schools that are in the City of Phoenix? Because they're not open now.
President Bacon, go ahead, Mitch. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to. I can't see on my camera, so I have a hard time seeing it.
I can only see one of you at a time right now. That is true. I mean, our intent, and I think we just have to see what our opening looks like when the metrics get there, if it coincides with anything coming from the City of Phoenix. You know, public parks versus our parks, we have followed their direction and closed our playgrounds and have made that known to the public that, like the city, we have done that, and we follow their, I don't want to say follow their direction, but we coincide with their direction. So I think going forward, we need to see where our city is at in making that determination.
Thank you. I want to make it very clear to everyone listening, I am not against recess. I believe in recess. I believe in play. I think it's necessary. I just want to make sure that we don't set our community up for an expectation that we may not be able to do. While I agree that it is hot in Phoenix, I do think more happens on a playground that is unobserved than anywhere else in a school. So with the limited number of staff that we have on those, in those playgrounds during lunch recess, I would be very concerned if children are not wearing masks. So that's where I stand. I agree with the way this is written.
Board Member Bacon, that was the mindset of in terms of making this decision. Just that is the level of how much can be, you know, it's unsupervised in terms of that free play. You know, back to the City of Phoenix piece, I think we might need to look at if there's a distinction, is that we are not a public park. You know, when we closed our playgrounds to the public during the time of when the stay-at-home order was there, it was to avoid pickup games and things like that that could, you know, not help mitigate the spread. This is a more controlled environment, and we might have that latitude, you know, to allow it for our own use.
Okay, that clarifies it, and I'm good with us having recess. To be clear, again, I'm not against recess, but thank you for that clarification, Dr. Von Echten.
You're welcome.
I mean, I think just to jump in a little bit, you know, I think we are still navigating new challenges here. So what recess is going to look like may not be what we are used to recess being. So you know, it's all piece, I believe. Does anybody else have any comments on the addendum? If not, may we have a motion to approve, since this is first and second read, the addendum with the revision to that last line as we discussed, with the addition of the district determining when cloth masks would no longer be necessary.
Red Rover, let me say so moved.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Aye.
Mrs. Matura?
Aye.
Mrs. Greenberg?
Aye.
Mrs. Case?
Nay. And let me just say, I totally support face masks in class, but I think there should be some flexibility on recess, whether it's a structured recess that they can run around when they're 6 feet apart. I just think to say it blanketly is wrong. So my vote is no.
And Mrs. Bacon?
Aye.
Thank you very much. By a vote of 4-1, the motion passes at 8:56 p.m. on Thursday, September 3rd.